just want to point out the fact that I have not finished a book this month, and it is the 20th, right? Yeah, October 20th, and I still have not finished a single book, which just really is depressing to me. I don't even want to look at Goodreads and see how far behind I am, because that feels overwhelming. But I know that once I finish school in December, I can read a bunch and I'll be able to get ahead on that. But it's just really sad in the moment. Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I am going to do a single review this week. If you watched my video last week, then you know what book I'm going to be talking about today. And I thought this deserved its own special review. And one of the books in my video last week that I talked about was By Way of the Moonlight by Elizabeth Musser. So this just came out in, I believe, August of this year. So that was really exciting to be able to read a book that is brand new. And if I go and do any challenges at the end of the year, like tags or something, I will have a book that I read that came out and was published this year, which I don't normally do, books that are like published in that year and I read them, because I read a lot of classics or books that I know are going to be good because they've been around for a couple years and I've heard people talking about it. Anyways, if you've been around for a couple months, I started reading Elizabeth Musser. Someone marked a book as read or something like that. I thought, oh, that looks interesting. So I went to go look at her, and someone from our church said, hey, I know her. And so that made me even more interested to read her books. I picked up a couple from Half Price Books. I had already ordered this one, and I started reading them. So I've read one other one by her, and then I read this one. I will link the video where I talked about the other one I read by her. But just so you know, I did like that one better, and I am very excited to read more of her books because I have like 3 sitting on my bookshelf that I want to get to. So, By Way of the Moonlight. So this one, the story is, it's a split storyline, and we have the grandmother in the 40s during World War II, and basically her story with obsession and always wanting more and being obsessed with something. And then we have the granddaughter in 2020, and she is also obsessed with something, and she's kind of losing everything else in her life while she's so hyper focused on this one thing. You'll have a couple of chapters in one person's perspective, and then you'll have a couple of chapters in the other person's perspective. You know how I feel about dual timeline books, so this took me probably like halfway through to really be able to appreciate it, because it's really hard for me to read books that are in the split timeline, especially if the characters are pretty similar, which these are. We're talking about a granddaughter and a grandmother, and their personalities are very similar. So it was just difficult to switch back and forth, and I really don't like it when you're into someone's story and then you have to switch to someone else's, and you want to know what comes next, but yet it breaks up the story. The sun rays are really bothering me. Let's see if I change. Okay, I had to move because of the sun. Now we're back. So 4 minutes in, I barely talked about the book. Anyways, about halfway through this book, I was really not feeling it. It was really bothering me, just the negative aspects of the book. Even though they were there to teach a lesson, I felt like it was a little bit too much. And so I think I mentioned this book maybe in my Christian fiction video that I did. And just the fact that throughout the book, there weren't a lot of biblical solutions, I felt like. So there's like 1 or 2 characters that are Christians and that do point to God and the attitude that we should be having in life. But I didn't feel like it was a predominant theme, Christianity. There was no mention of going to church or any biblical counseling. So that kind of turned me off. But maybe half to 3/4 of the way through, the book really picked up. It stopped that cycle of sin where you have to get out of it, but then you just keep going back to the same thing. It felt about like 3/4 of the way through, she started making progress, and so I really enjoyed that. And the story started to pick up with the whole World War II stuff of the grandmother storyline, and I loved that. Overall, I gave this book 4 stars, and my favorite part about it was the World War II stuff, because I love historical fiction. And I really had never heard about the Battle of the Atlantic, which I thought that was so cool, and I actually really want to go learn more about it, maybe find some other historical fiction books that were written about it, because basically World War II was happening right off the coast of Georgia. And you had these German U-boats coming and sinking merchant ships, which you might have heard of that before, but I had never really thought about that and heard of that. That was really fascinating to me to learn about, a part of American history that I feel like isn't commonly talked about. So I love that part. And I don't know, so the two characters, there's Allie's the granddaughter and Dale is the grandmother. I probably liked Dale's story better because obviously it was more historical, so I like that more. And there was so much emotion. So if you have sensitivity to death and sadness, you might just want to know that going into this book, that my heart literally was just hurting so bad reading this book. I mean, she writes the emotion so well, and you feel like you are in the mind of that person and you're just heartbroken. And there is some just, wow, sad circumstances in this book. So that was like killing me in the last part of the book, which kind of reminds me of Middlemarch. Like, you get to the last quarter and it's just emotional all the way through. There was a lot of happy like scenes in there. I really enjoyed that, and the love story was very sweet between, well, there's Dale's love story and then there's also Allie's love story. So I thought there were some interesting things about marriage and romance in there, and I don't want to spoil anything, but one issue that I did really have with the book is this very passionate crush that one of the characters has, like, from the age of 12. And that was something that did bother me a lot in the book, was there was a lot of thinking about her crush and trying to impress him. And then as I got older, a lot of kissing, and I thought that was too overdone for a Christian book. I'm sure girls have those feelings, but not every girl does, and a lot of Christian parents, I feel like, wouldn't want that introduced to their young children. So that was just something to be warned about, to read it, that I guess if I saw that in real life, I would not approve of it. So it wasn't very enjoyable to read about. But it was super sweet to see the marriages and the children, and there's a little bit of like lost family, like finding family you didn't know you had. And overall, just the story was woven so well together. And Elizabeth Musser, that is the thing that she does so well, is takes these different storylines, whether in the other book that I read of hers, it was many different people, and she just wove them together so perfectly. And then in this one, she has the two different storylines where obviously they don't meet, but you're learning facts in each one. And she just pulls it all together perfectly and matches everything up, and you see a purpose for everything. And I think that was just so brilliantly done. So I did enjoy it, and I did give it 4 stars. I think you just have to be in a reading mood and get all the way through to the end and not get stuck on the stuff that you don't necessarily like, because it does get better and there is a point to it, if that makes sense. So I did enjoy this book, and I'm really grateful to Elizabeth Musser for writing good Christian fiction, and I am so excited to get to her other books. Right now I am obviously in an extreme reading slump, but I really want to finish the book that I'm reading before I pick up any of these other books that I know will be so fast to read. So hopefully I will maybe do like a Elizabeth Musser marathon and just read like all of her books that I have. I think that would be really fun. But if you read By Way of the Moonlight, leave me a comment and let me know how you like it and what you thought. Do you agree with what I said? And have you read any of her other books, and how do you think it compares? I don't know. Oh, last thing. So this takes place in 2020, obviously, and it was so weird to read historical fiction about your own history, because obviously I experienced all the COVID stuff, and so it was so interesting. It barely like touches on it in this book, and I just thought that was so weird to be reading a book about something that just happened a couple of years ago. And funny, the different personalities make an appearance. Even the conspiracy theorist shows up in the book, which I thought was really interesting. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. I will be back here next week with another video. And if you want to go check out my Instagram, I will leave the link below. Right now I'm doing an Anne of Green Gables challenge where I basically am posting something every day of the week. So it would really mean a lot if you went over there, gave it a like, gave me a follow, and we can chat throughout the week over there. So I hope that you have a happy reading week, and I will see you next week. Bye.